So, welcome to this episode of Men Able Matters with me, Steve Whitten. I've got an amazing guest today. We only connected on LinkedIn last week. We had a chat almost immediately, and straight away we hit it off. And we said we actually should have recorded that conversation. So, here we are now recording this conversation. So, welcome to Men Able Matters, Sarah Sylvester. How are you, Sarah?
Oh, Stephen, it's great to be connected with you. It was one of those serendipitous moments where I reached out to you, you immediately came back to me, we had a conversation, and like you said, it was like I was almost kicking myself because some of the nuggets that we were coming out of bouncing off each other. And at the time, unlike now, we couldn't see each other, but I just felt that we had like an immediate connection with some of the things that we were talking about in terms of people, industry, business, connection, collaboration. And I'm just absolutely so grateful to be here. And one of the things that we're trying to do, because I have my own podcast as well, is trying to do a two-way podcast thing, which is going to be great. So whatever we talk about on yours, I'm going to just throw it up onto mine and see how we get on. So
Perfect.
every
Yeah,
day's a first.
absolutely. Well, that sounds brilliant. So, you're recording me, recording you, recording me. That was a bit
Absolutely.
Alan Partridge, I know, but we know what we mean. So fantastic. Well, Sarah, tell you what, do us a favour in great Men Able Matters style. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Well,
Um, if you want to make that last about 20 minutes, that'd be brilliant.
Well, my name's Sarah Sylvester and I'm a transformative coach, and I've just started my own business. I've been going since about June of this year, and the transformative world was something that I fell into because I had very much my own transformation. I struggled with my mental health. I had a very public, very painful mental breakdown back in the summer of last year. It was probably classic case of workplace burnout, struggling massively with self-doubt, self-criticism, an overindulging sense of speed. My mind was operating at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I thought that that was the right way to go. I thought that to be senior in a corporate world, in automotive, and felt that being a woman as well in that industry, you had to work that little bit harder, you had to push, you had to keep going. So 12-hour days, 100 emails a day, Slack notifications, call after call after call. And my mind was just speeding away at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I never felt at the time that there was anything that I could do about that. I just thought that, well, you just got to suck it up. And some of the phrases that I heard during that time was grow a thicker skin, just get on with it, just live with it. And again, being quite senior in the industry as well, having people that report into you, there's almost like, and Stephen, I think you touched on this in one of your posts, a mask that we all wear, that
Yeah,
you don't
100%.
know what's going on underneath. You may have this public persona of poise and ease. You can get up and speak to hundreds of people about something that's very knowledgeable to you. But underneath, I was crying, I was dying, it was awful. And I just didn't know what to do about that. And ironically, the breakdown happened on a day where we had somebody in to speak about mental health awareness and train us all to become mental health first aiders. And I remember the speaker that came in, I felt he was talking to my actual soul. Do you know when you look like that, people can actually know what's going on behind you? And despite the facade that I had, he was talking to the real me, and I just couldn't cope with that. Couldn't cope with it. So yeah, I just had a very horrible breakdown and took some time off, and then
Did that
realized
happen
that,
in that session?
yes, it did. It
Right.
did. And I had to leave the room. So I broke
Wow.
down in tears and I had to leave the room.
Mm.
And then the culminating kind of emotion just spilled out of me. So I don't know whether I told you when we spoke, but I was on the brink of doing something really dangerous. I had in my mind, and I think this is where my journey with thought has come about, that I thought that I was a bit of a human imposter. I was going to get kicked off the planet for not behaving as normal humans do. So I thought, I don't necessarily want to end my life, but I don't want to carry on living this life.
Hmm.
So a chair, a window, put the two together, follow it out, that might look like a good idea right now. And something, Stephen, stopped me from doing that. And I was, not at the time, but I was fascinated about what it was, that inner sense of, I don't know what you call it, alarm bell, that inner sense of wisdom that just almost brought me back from that brink, and the ebb
Do you
and
think it was
flow of,
purpose?
possibly, absolutely, it could have been anything, but I think that
Mm,
ebb and flow of thought and emotion, I've always been quite fascinated with. It was, even at my darkest time,
mm,
my thought process changed when I allowed it to, because nothing else was happening. I was just, you know what, forget it, I've had enough, that's it, I'm off this planet, go
mm,
away, the lot of
mm,
you.
mm,
And it was just fascinating to me. I mean, not until a few months later that I realized what that was, that inner sense of calm that we all have
mm,
access to.
mm.
But at the time it was just, I don't know, I give in, I surrender. I surrender.
Well, I think this was why you and I connected when we spoke on the phone, because we touched on all of this stuff and we shared stories, and we
Yeah,
were, kind of amazed at just how similar they are.
yeah,
And this whole thing about wearing a mask, and particularly in the automotive industry, there's almost a, and the more senior you get, the more you're encouraged to keep that mask up.
yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think? You mentioned how that sort of looked for you in the automotive industry, but where do you think all that came from? Have you been carrying that stuff around for some time, do you think?
I think so. Yes, absolutely. I mean, reflecting back, Stephen, from most of my adult life, I mean, I'm in my late 40s now. Most of my adult life, I was almost, I had this sense of doom and gloom hanging over me, that there was something missing. There was something that I was just not quite getting, that everywhere I went, I believed that the world had it in for me. And again, reflecting back on my own transformation, I had a massive misunderstanding that we live outside in. So we live from an outside world coming at us.
Hmm.
Like, and I'll give you an example. This is quite a funny example. I'm a runner, and when I when I go out running, I could say to myself, the rain is affecting my running style. So I'm only going to run in the sunshine, because if I run in the rain, I'm not going to run well. Or another way of saying that would be, the weather is affecting my mood. So we all wake up on a Monday, we've got that Monday feeling, we look outside, it's dark and gloomy. Oh my God, I feel moody because of the weather. And that outside in world was something, I think, that I believed, that in order to do something well, you need to have, and again, I think we talked about this, Stephen, a certain amount of status attached to it.
Mm,
When I get a bigger car, I am going to be happy. When I book that expensive holiday, that is going to make me happy. When I get a promotion and I go through the ranks of my industry, that is going to prove that I am successful. And I think carrying that around with me throughout the whole of my adult life, I think anything I did from my mid-20s, I did really well. I was really good at this stuff called life, but almost like looking over my shoulder, waiting for the penny to drop and waiting for somebody to come to me and tap me on the shoulder and say, you know what, Sarah, this is all a ruse. You're going to
mm.
be, you're out of here. You've had a, no,
Yeah,
you're
we've
out of
worked
here.
you out.
And you're like, yeah, we've worked you out. And I think I carried that around with me for a lot of years, and
Mm,
almost
mm.
that holding your breath feeling that you get when you're waiting to be found out. And I spent a lot of time holding my breath, just no, this isn't right, this isn't right.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just culminated into that horrible episode.
So now you're turning that into your transformational work. So you obviously see something similar in lots of other people, and then this is the bit that you and
Absolutely.
I talked about, how many people actually carry that kind of stuff around. So I'm not asking about you specifically, because I don't want to trigger anything for you as we're
No, it's
talking. But
fine.
where do you think that that originally comes from? Because we're not born like that, are we? We're not born with those doubts and fears. So where Where does that happen, do you think? What are some of the examples you see of where that kicks off?
It's a really fascinating question, Stephen, and I think it boils down to people believing that they live in the output of what they think about. And I'll probably try and explain that a little bit better, that we think something, but we are not our thoughts. And that sounds really simple, but I can think that I am anxious. I can think that I'm depressed. I can think that the world has got it in for me. I can think lots of things. I can think I like salt and vinegar crisps. I can think I like the weather. I can think lots of things. But when we as humans start to identify with that thinking process, so we think that is who we are, and we start to believe it, and we then carry that around with it, and then we carry on almost like a snowball effect to it. It then becomes a really scary place, because believing thought is true is probably one of the most misunderstandings that I've come across. And also you can absolutely terrify yourself, Stephen. I mean, if you
Yeah.
think about some of the things that you've thought about yourself,
Yeah, yeah.
you can scare yourself silly with some of the things. And actually, to think that you've just thought about it, and thought is neither personal or permanent, it's very transient.
Mm.
And the minute you attach meaning to it, that's when it gets pretty compelling. Because I was compelled. I was absolutely compelled. And I'll tell you a very short story, that after my breakdown, I didn't leave the house for weeks, but only to run. And I was sat in my bed one day, and because I got back into bed after I'd gone out for a run. I was in my gym gear. I was sweaty. I was stinky. It was horrible. And I sat there and I'm like, this is it for me. This is all I'm worth. And all of a sudden I glanced up, and it was a beautiful summer day, and there was birds tweeting and the sun was shining. And I looked outside, and all of a sudden my mind went whoosh, peace, calm. And I went, hang on a minute, you're supposed to be anxious. You're supposed to be depressed. You're supposed to be wound up about these things. Get back to that place immediately, because you're not worth the beauty and the loveliness and the calm that you've just dropped into. Get back to that horrible anxious place that you've just been in. And that was fascinating to me, that without doing anything, I could drop into a place of complete serenity and calm. That was
Mm, mm,
fascinating.
mm.
And I see that a lot in other people. When you slow down, and this comes from somebody who worked at 1 billion miles an hour, when you slow down, your mind slows down, all kinds of wonderful, fresh things pop in. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why we connected, Stephen, because there's that, and you get out of your own way, and I get rid of all the angst about, oh no, I'm not going to reach out to Stephen because he's much better than me, and he's more senior than me, and he's good at what he does, and I'm rubbish at what I do. So why the hell would Stephen ever want to talk to me? And all of that inner catastrophizing dialogue. It's
And
like
yet it's amazing
conversations.
what that all that, it's amazing what a couple of banners and a sticker on a microphone can create. It's like 70 quid and 4 quid. Do you know what I mean? And it's but you're absolutely right, because isn't that a symptom of the specifically the automotive industry that we
Mm.
work in, where we see and hear that going on all the time.
Oh,
People
absolutely.
feeling bad because they're not as good as the person that they sit next to or whatever. And
Yeah,
it's bizarre. I'm sure that happens elsewhere, but motor industry is what we're familiar with, isn't it? Um,
absolutely.
I've got some examples since we spoke of pretty much exactly what you've just described, this whole kind of going at 1 million miles an hour. Because obviously a lot of businesses at the moment, second lockdown we're in as we record this, and a lot of businesses are finding that they've got more staff on furlough, and there's those that are working twice as hard. I was speaking to some service managers the other day, and one of them said, out of 20 people in their business, 9 of them have come forward and said that they are openly struggling with mental health related issues
Yeah,
that
doesn't
could
surprise me.
be a mix of all sorts of stuff. And even that's become even worse, that fortnight ago, one technician actually attempted to take his own life.
That's
And the
tragic.
knock-on effect that's had around the business is just immense. The reason we were talking was because those managers were openly saying, we haven't got the skill set to deal with that.
No.
You know, we don't know
Absolutely.
what to say. We don't know how to deal with it. We're not sure how we deal with it when he comes back.
Yeah.
Um, and you mentioned a mental health first aid session, and I'm not decrying the need for that at all. But
Yeah.
that's why I asked, did your emotional breakdown, did that happen in that session? Because the bit I'm interested in is, did that help the people around you to know how to deal with what you did?
Yeah.
Because I'm just worried that in our industry, and I'm going to say it because it's quite brutal, but our industry is too reactive and too
Yes.
cynical,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know. And you could just imagine a room, and I'm going to say this on a vlog later, just imagine a room full of sales managers sitting there with that session that you went through,
Yeah.
and they're all looking at the watch. None of them want to be there. You know,
Yeah.
there's going to be a knock at the door in a minute because somebody's got a customer who's arrived, and you know,
Mm.
problems that are happening, and you know what I
Mm.
mean. It's going to be,
Yeah. No,
it's not going to,
absolutely.
it's not going to address the cultural issue. So what happened with you after all that? How did you, what support did you get?
I think just touching back on your reactive thing, I think you're absolutely spot on there, Stephen, because in my experience, and certainly with some of the conversations I've been having with people, um, to be reactive and to give somebody something to do, and then also as well to expect people who've experienced or even witnessed somebody with failing mental health without, and also trying to then say to them, here's something for you to do about that, rather than getting to that level of understanding that is it's almost like what's behind it, rather than giving you top tips and strategies on what to do about it. And again, I'm not berating the whole mental health first aid as way of working, because I think it's a great initiative, but I don't think it's, I think we spoke about fixing a kind of going into open heart surgery and fixing an open heart with a plaster. It's almost like
Exactly.
reacting to something.
Yeah.
And I think following on from my breakdown, to answer your question, there was almost like and it was coming from me. I'm not going to talk badly about anybody I worked with, but there's almost like an embarrassment and a bit of a, oh, we're not quite sure, and oh, we're going to have to put you in a place where you're going to be out the way, and oh, we're not. And there was no sense of, I mean, I felt very embarrassed and very ashamed. And I don't think anybody was equipped to deal with that.
Mm, mm,
And I don't think we were actually having the open and honest conversations where I went back into the business and said, you know what, this is what's happened. This is
mm.
what I'm experiencing. And this is why I think I've experienced it. And actually getting to the crux of understanding rather than reacting,
Yeah. Yeah.
and proactively equipping people with simple tools like, it's a conversation. You touched on it before, Stephen. It's a conversation. Let's get you in a room, sit you down, and let's just have a chat. Because
Yeah.
certainly with the world that I'm working in, the transformational world, transformation comes through a conversation, because people start to surprise themselves because they're not coming with that mask that we all talked about. I must say the right thing. I must do the right thing. I can't embarrass myself. I can't look stupid in front of my boss. I can't move away too far from my objectives. I've got however many things I need to sell to achieve what I want to achieve. Let's just sit down in a room, Stephen, and let's have a conversation.
Yeah. 100%. Well, that's exactly what we're aiming to address through Menable, is the cultural side of it. And you know, we're like you. We're not going to decry the mental health first
Mm.
aid approach, because that clearly has its purpose. But I just think specifically for our industry at this time,
Yeah.
you know, we're not ready for it because it is too reactive. It's too cynical.
Yes.
And I mean, I even had one of these managers last week who was saying that he's almost now got to a point where he's afraid to even say to somebody in the morning, "How are you?"
Yes.
Because
That's surprising.
he doesn't feel strong enough that he can deal with the answer coming back that isn't, "I'm fine, I'm okay, yeah, I'll be all right," or, you
Yeah.
know, "It's not me," or, you know, "Same shit, different day." All that sort of
Yeah.
phraseology that we
Yeah.
use, you know. But
Yeah.
if somebody came back and said, "Well, no, actually, I'm not all right, and I really could do with a chat," he
Yeah.
just thinks, "Oh, I wish I'd never asked the question now, because now it's taken me into an area I don't understand."
Yeah. And I think we touched on it before, Stephen, when on our last chat, this whole ethos of being present rather than prepared. And that was very powerful for
Oh, I
me to
love that, by the
see.
way. I've used that since.
But that's really powerful for me for a conversation, because when
Mm,
you come to a conversation and you are present, not prepared, you've got no judgment, you've got no idea. I mean, I rocked up to this, I've got no notes,
mm.
I've got no idea what's going to come out my gob. Hopefully I'm not going to swear, but you know what I mean. But it's like coming up to a conversation present, not prepared, with no way of, if in that scenario I really need a chat, okay, let's have a chat. Whatever
Yeah, yeah,
crops up, and whatever crops up, we will deal with it when it crops up. We will have a conversation, we will know. And it comes back to that special sense of inner knowing. You will know what to say when you know when the time is right for you to say.
yes, yeah, yeah.
You
But I
will
think
know.
they're absolutely spot on. And I think if you picture that in a busy car dealership,
Yeah,
are our managers not only equipped and have the right level of emotional intelligence that they need for that, but also, does the day allow them?
yeah,
Because I can remember as a manager, as a dealer principal, walking through the business and just saying to people, "Hi, how you doing?" And knowing full well that actually I was doing that as a way of just acknowledging them,
yeah,
because I was on my way to the next, delving into a spreadsheet, or jumping on a conference call, or sitting down dealing with an issue or a complaint, or writing a report, or
yeah,
and it just goes on, doesn't it?
yeah,
So I can see
absolutely.
where this guy's coming from when he says, I don't want to ask the question, how are you? Because he's worried that actually in his heart, he really wants to sit and have that chat with somebody who says, yeah, I do need some help. But he's thinking to himself, I've got this great big long list of things to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it comes back to that again. I think, Stephen, this outside in world rather than this inside out world, you can be
Mm,
experiencing a world. We are sitting in the same room, but you can experience the world in a completely different way to me.
mm,
I can be thinking all sorts, but and that's not replicated for you. So in that situation, and some of the conversations and chats that I've had with people, you don't know what's going on inside their head.
no.
And
And you can be
and
lonely as well.
absolutely. And there's that kind of sense of, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And you go back to what you said, and it struck a chord with me. We're not born this way.
Mm,
Or we're not born to be anxious or depressed or suicidal. And sometimes it's getting ourselves tangled in our own thought process. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings.
mm, mm.
There's fundamentally nothing different from us. I mean, apart from the male female thing, but fundamentally, we're all human beings.
That's a whole different subject of a
I
different podcast,
know.
Sarah.
When mummy and daddy love each other very much and all of that. Sorry, that was me getting a little bit rude.
It's
But
all on it's on a spectrum now.
but we're all the same human beings.
No, you're
We
right.
just experience the world through our own thinking.
Mm, mm.
And to turn up to a conversation and be present, not prepared, and know at the end of the day, you're like me. I get it because I'm human too. I don't have to fix you because I'm human too. I may have had a scary thought, but all I've done is I've just let it go. But I know what it's like to be human. We all know what it's like to be human, but we
Yeah, yeah.
forget that. We really forget what it's like to be human. We forget.
I would take that present not prepared as just a step further and say, and I'm
Mm,
not sure if this came up in the conversation with you, because I know it did with other people that I've spoken to about
mm,
this as well. And for me, because pre all of this COVID stuff, I was emceeing and hosting conferences and stuff like that. And whilst I've always had a bit of a reputation for winging it,
mm,
when you do an event like that, you can't. A one-day event ends up being about 5 days worth of preparation beforehand,
yes.
because you've absolutely got to be on point.
Yeah.
But somebody once said to me, the mark of a true professional is that the ad libs are well rehearsed.
Yes.
And I thought that's about the present and
Exactly.
prepared thing that you're talking about, is actually you can be present, but with a hot, what your life and your experience has done is prepared you for that conversation.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, Stephen, because it touches on what we were talking about a little bit ago, and I just made a complete hash of coming out with it, that you will know what to say when the time comes for you to say it.
Hmm.
And you'll only know that if you are present, but you'll only know that at the time that that happens.
Yeah.
And sometimes for a lot of people, certainly for me in a senior corporate world, that was scary. I wanted to control things within an inch of their life. I needed to know the far end of it, where it came from, how it got there, what it was going to do while it was there, and all of that. I got the t-shirt, worn it twice, and then, yeah, every analogy that I'm destroying here.
Mhm.
But it's it's a way of being present, but knowing, again, your inner sense of self or inner sense of knowing. You'll always know what to say.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
never going to be a time, Stephen, where you're going to open your mouth and words aren't going to come out. And if you are present with that, and you know yourself, you know your inner sense of knowing, you, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, really, what's the worst that can happen? You
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
you might end up, Stephen, actually saving a life. That's
Yeah.
what you might
Well,
end up doing.
exactly. And that's what you and I again connected, and we had this conversation
Mm.
on that subject, because I think, our periods of dark thoughts were very similar.
Mm.
Um, and who was there to catch us? I mean, I don't know about you, but I was very fortunate. I had a good bunch of really good friends around me,
Yeah.
that would say all the right things, and not just what I wanted to hear. Don't take me wrong in that respect. They would say the things that were important to be said.
Yeah.
But and it took a while, I have to say, because the key thing for me was loneliness.
Yeah.
And as I've said to a few people before, as a speaker and MC, I could be in a room with 500 people in it, and on stage and be the center of attention and still feel lonely.
Yeah.
How bizarre is that?
Yeah. You think, because you can think anything you want to think, and you don't have to
Absolutely.
think anything, and it's
Yeah.
just it's fascinating now, because that just proves that thought is so wonderful, that you can be 500 people looking at you, listening to you, you can feel lonely. That is just fascinating for me,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it just proves that thought doesn't follow a certain sense of, because it's almost like a kind of consequence. I do this, then this will happen.
Mm,
So the weather outside is miserable, that means I'm miserable. It doesn't
mm.
work like that. And it's just so fascinating that it can be like that. And that's the misunderstanding for me, that I think if people tapped into that a little bit more, their world would just look so much more healthy, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that I did, and I probably still do a little bit because I am human, I had a lot of me on my mind. And what I mean by that is I was fascinated by me.
Mm,
I thought about me a lot. Oh my God, what's going on in my head? Let me just analyze that. Let me just think about that some more. Let me just work out what I'm going to do to fix that. And thinking yourself out of a thinking problem, Stephen, never works. It doesn't. And it's just, I think for anybody, having less of you on your mind will bring you possibly a sense of ease and a sense of calm, and it would definitely slow you down a little bit and make your world look a little less cluttered,
yeah.
because we
Yeah.
all like a less than cluttered mind.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to write that down as well. He's always full of little nuggets. We've only had two conversations,
I
and
know, there's so, we've got such lots of inspiration from each other,
it's going to
haven't
be like a
we?
weekly podcast. This now at this. So, what would be your key thing from all of what you've said, and what we've discussed? And what would be your key kind of tips for managers or anyone, particularly in the automotive industry, who's supporting colleagues and that? Then if without getting them to the level that you and I are at in terms of this
Yeah,
understanding, but if you are in those busy businesses and you are present, able to have those conversations, what tips would you give them?
I would say, Stephen, probably the first one is be open.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is, a lot of the time, again, we get up in our own heads and we are very closed. And I think I described it on our first conversation as almost being restrictive. I felt that I was in a straitjacket. And I have a lot of compassion for anybody who's in a senior role, that there's so much coming at you in terms of what you're supposed to be doing, that you are very restrictive. But just be open to hear something new and something fresh. Just be open and realize that the people that are around you are your greatest adventure.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a transformational chat with somebody, And what you say to them, you may have thought, I mean, I've said a lot of things to a lot of people, and I said something to somebody the other day and they went, oh my God. And they had one of those, those Homer Simpson moments, like, don't. And I was like, what did I just say? Is that what's going to make you like different? Just be open for the fact that you could just have a conversation, you could change somebody's life. So yeah, my tip would be open.
Well, I'm going to make an observation, if you don't mind, and that is that if you hadn't told me the stuff that you've been through, I would never have guessed that from your energy and your ability to, just kind of light up a conversation.
Oh, thank you.
And that happened when we connected last week, and that's why we immediately said, we've got to do this
We've
as a
got to do
podcast.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder, when you just said there about, you say things to people and you go, well, what did I say? I didn't realize I said something that's inspired you. And I was just going to ask you, do you think some of that is also about the energy and almost like a bow wave that you're sort of creating now that you're thinking in the way that you are compared to where you were before?
I do think so, but I also think it's not about me. It's about almost, I have got so little, I don't know how to say this in the right way because it's going to sound a little bit weird. I give no regard about what I think and feel. And what I mean by that, if I got up in my own head about anything that I did, I just taught myself out of it. So I probably have the least regard, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but I don't really think about what I do very much. I just know when I touch that gut reaction, that gut reaction, Stephen, made me reach out and contact you. That gut reaction made me accept our chat. That gut reaction dialed me into this Zoom call today. I don't necessarily pay myself, my head, my thoughts, oh my God, you sound stupid. Oh my God, you're waving your arms in the air. Oh my God, I don't pay that any regard, because once you go, and I suppose they call it flow, Stephen.
Yes. Yeah.
Getting into that flow
Yeah.
state where
one of our Men-Able coaches, Emma Shaw, she talks about that quite a bit. And you're spot on.
Creative flow, and trying to edit that flow when you're in the flow again it's just not worth it, because get the flow out. I mean, you could talk bollocks for 45 minutes and then afterwards then look
there
at
you
it
go,
and
you're in flow now.
And I'm in flow now. I am in flow now. But again, it's writing, and I think some of the stuff that probably attracted me to you in the Men-Able was a lot of vulnerable people just going with it and just being open to saying what is on their mind. It's not going to sound all professional and all this, that, and the other, but who cares? It's real life. And I think once you start speaking from that place of reality rather than masks, fabrication, caught up in thinking, caught up in yourself, all of that, that's when it starts getting really, it's just disingenuous. It doesn't mean anything. And it stops becoming real.
Well, you know what? Early doors, I've got to say this. I had a few people who sort of poured scorn a little bit on the whole Men-Able thing and sort of said, well, what qualifies you and the people around you to, coach and counsel others? And, to be fair, I know that came from a place of love, and people were absolutely spot on to ask the question. And it did help us go away and clarify some thinking and go, actually, we do need to be very careful about how we position this. But let's not lose sight of the fact that, me as an example, 35 years in the industry, which means I know it inside out. 20 years in learning and development, 15 of those years running my own business, plus having had my own issues that I've become quite open and clear about as well, and an NLP practitioner certificate and various other bits and pieces, and an ability, like you've just said, to sit and talk to somebody and go, come on, talk to me, tell me what's going on, let me understand what's happening for you. Put all of that together, and forgive me sounding arrogant, but I think that kind of trumps a 260-hour coaching course.
I think you couldn't have summed it up any more perfect, Stephen, because I think certainly for me, starting out the way I am, quite new, quite fresh, I don't have any credentials to speak of. I haven't sat a course and filled out loads of workbooks and
Mm.
got a degree and all that kind of like, oh, look at my shiny certificate. And I don't mean that to sound patronizing, but my credentials are right here, and I'm pointing to myself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
My credentials speak from a place of truth. They speak from my heart, they speak from my gut, and also as well, they speak from that inner sense of wisdom. And that is all that I need, because the minute I start, and again, I recognize this in others because it's very familiar in the sales environment, you start to justify your existence. You start to almost second guess yourself, and you start to try and justify why you are here, why you're on this, why you're here, as in why you're in this job, why you're doing what you're doing, why customers don't want to talk to you, why you aren't closing deals faster than boyo next door to you, or why you've had a bad day, or why you're not hitting your target. And you start to justify yourself over and over and over again, rather than just, well, that's the way it is right now. It is what it is. And getting in touch with, I suppose, the present moment is being quite powerful. And that's when it comes back to being present, not prepared. But even outside of calls, meetings, anything like that, that whole, all we have is now. And all we all have is now. And justifying something that we may have done 2 weeks past Tuesday, and we may be doing 3 weeks come Friday, justifying ourselves, well, I'm sitting a course and in 4 years I'm going to have this, that and the other, and that's going to then make me capable of talking to you. What? You mean I need a certificate to have a conversation now? That doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose my credentials are sat right here.
Well, look, I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, I know this isn't how we came about talking, but having spoken to you now a couple of times and done this with you, I wouldn't hesitate to, one, have you as a coach.
Oh, thank you.
And, if I felt that I wanted to sort of take my transformation any further, then, I would want to work with you. And I would openly say now at this point that if you're open for it, you're on the panel of people we'll refer people to through MenAble.
Oh, that's fantastic news. And I'm the same as well. I mean, working in the automotive that I did, I do have a few of the contacts that are still around. But in terms of mental health and shouting about things that are positive in the world, because we can get caught up a little bit in some of the negativity that's hanging around in the world. But what you're doing, Stephen, in the automotive world is phenomenal, because
thank you.
I think we spoke before about the perception of automotive, and how it's a little bit, dare I say, still a little bit behind the times, maybe on progression, technology. I'm being probably a little bit.
A little bit is you being polite, yeah.
But in order to.
But it is, we say that, don't we? And we laugh about it. But I've done 35 years, and I've tried leaving twice and come back. So, it's that bad, isn't it? It's really bad.
But yeah, it's a little bit behind the times. But what you're doing in the industry right now, should have been done 5-10 years ago, but it's been doing now, and you come at it with such a zealous passion that's just, it's marvelous, Stephen. I'm really, can I say I'm proud of you? That is not patronizing, is it? I don't mean
it. You can
in
say whatever you want. As we've already discussed, what's going to happen is you can say that, and I'll go away in a minute and go, "Did she really mean that?
Did she really mean that? Why did you say that?
What did you say that for?
What did you say that for? I'm looking behind me. Did you say that to somebody else?
Talking about someone else, clearly, yeah. That's the thing, is you're never really alone with those thoughts, though, are you? That's the thing.
But you're never alone with them, Stephen, and you'll never fix them either, because it's like trying to tell somebody that they can fix the weather and trying to tell somebody that they actually understand gravity. That's the other two things.
Do you know what? You've touched on something there, and I think we did talk about this before, that this is a big part of the issue in the automotive industry. We are geared up for diagnostics and fixing.
Yeah.
And take the workshop as an example. If you're a technician, a mechanic, your whole life is about diagnosing what the problem is with a car, removing broken bits, putting new bits back on, and making sure it all works properly, and off it goes. And hopefully you never see it again if you've done it right the first time. Now, I think because we're so ingrained in that thinking, we try and apply the same when it comes to people.
Yes.
And I've used that analogy a few times, and it seems to get the point across that people go, "Oh yeah, yeah, I get that," and that I think is where we're stuck.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Stephen. You've summed it up perfectly fine, it perfectly well. It is that fixing, and as a society, I think we outside of mental health, outside the automotive and within mental health, there is a propensity that we need to fix it. We need to
Mm,
give you strategies and top tips, and we need to put you on a course or whatever it is, and fix all the time. But fixing is okay, and I'm not dissing fixing. Can I say dissing fixing? Anyway, I've just said it. Um,
I'm going to
but
write that down. Dissing, fixing.
disinfix. I'm disinfecting. It sounds like disinfecting, doesn't it?
That
But
could have come out all completely wrong. All of it. All of that.
I know it could have come out completely wrong, because it will work.
Mm,
But if you are looking for transformational change, no amount of top tips and strategies is going to get you transformationally
mm,
any
mm.
different, because thinking that you're never going to have a negative thought ever again, you might as well say the sun's never going to rise ever again,
Yeah,
or it's
yeah,
never going to be winter ever again,
yeah,
or I'm never going to, yeah, whatever other analogy that I can completely destroy. But
yeah.
it's one of those things that we're always going to have them because we're human and we're thinking, feeling creatures, and trying to get rid of them, just let them go.
Well, I love the thought that because in this country we do moan about the weather, and I've heard it said a few times. There's no such thing as bad weather. There's just an inappropriate choice of clothing.
Absolutely spot on.
If you go out in your shorts and a t-shirt on a day when there's 4 foot of snow out there, then you may have made the wrong choice, and that
Yeah.
work with that analogy, but it seems to work in other areas as well. I think.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right about the fixing thing. It's just moving away from fixing, which is quite difficult when you work in
Mm,
an industry where fixing is that's what you do for a living. You fix a
yeah,
car.
yeah. Well, I think that's where this manager I was referring to the other day was coming from when he said that he was concerned that asking the question "How are you?" was going to get a response that he didn't know how to deal with, because I
Yeah,
think he instinctively just wants to, if he has a chat, sit somebody down and fix them.
wants to fix them. Yeah.
What you need to do is, or what you should do is, and actually we would know that those are two phrases that you would absolutely never use.
No, no,
Um,
because one works for one is, and also as well, I thought that when well-meaning people would say that to me. So you've got to have 3 affirmations first thing in the morning. You've got to say 3 things that you're going to do today. You've got to, and then at the end of the day, you've got to give 3 things that you're grateful for. I got anxious about that because I was like, I haven't done my affirmations today. That must make me a bad person. And I can't think of 3 things that I'm grateful for. Oh my God. And whereas they're okay because it's all about positive mental attitude, positive thinking. But you can't trick your brain. You can't. There's
mm,
always going
mm,
to be negativity spiraling because that's just what we are.
yeah,
We think what we think, but we don't have to think. If we don't have to think that. We don't have to identify with that. We think
yeah,
it, but we don't have to identify with it.
yeah. Sarah, that's been amazing. Now I know we somehow are going to make this work as a two-way.
I
Um,
know. I'm looking forward to that.
but I was going to offer up that actually I think we could almost do with a part two, if
Well,
you're
I
up for
would be
that.
always up for that, Stephen. I love talking to you, and so far that's 2 conversations we've had, and
Wow.
I'm buzzing about both of them.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. That well, likewise. So yeah, let's do that. We'll get one in the diary for next week or the week after.
Mm.
And I'll tell you what, I'll let you go in. I'll let you be in the chair and ask all the questions.
That would be good, actually. Yeah, let's do a role reversal.
Do it in reverse. Yeah. Do you know what? As I found, as I was even saying that, I thought, oh God, that's going to sound as though that's all about me.
You see,
See,
you
exactly.
see,
See, exactly. You've had an effect on me already.
you see.
This stuff works. It
Well,
definitely works. Yeah,
nothing to do with
that's
me.
good. Well, look, I've said that, it'd be great to have you, on the panel of men able as we get going. We're going to want people around us that we know and trust and like, that we can make sensible referrals to. One of the key things about men able is we want to offer, through members or clients or sponsors, we want to offer their employees free at the point of access.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not always, and we want to actually veer away from the crisis stuff as well. There is a mechanism for capturing that. We want to actually do the prevention bit,
Yeah.
which is earlier on. So what we want to do is we want to hear that manager who says, I can't have that conversation about how are you because I'm worried about the outcome. We want to take that, go to his employer and say, he's probably not the only manager you've got who feels like that.
Yeah.
We should be working with you to help your managers transform.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what we want to be doing. So
That's
if you're up for
perfect.
that, I'd like to include you in that panel, if you want to call it that, of people that we can use.
I would be absolutely honoured and grateful and really blessed to be able to do that. I think one of the things that certainly I offer as part of my business is very, very similar. It's just that let's have a conversation to start with. And every client that I take on, I'll just give them a 30-minute where you can just download. Let's just have a chat. And then from then on in, whatever comes about.
Yeah.
And it's good to be able to just connect. I think
Absolutely.
that's the connect and collaborate, but connection for me is the thing that gives you the goosebumps.
Yeah. Well, talking of which, that was a lovely tenuous link done completely without realizing it. How can people connect with you?
Oh
Well,
my God, connection. Here we go. This
what's
is
the
where I
best way
start
they
plugging
can find
myself.
you?
And even then, you saying that, oh my God, I've got to plug myself. Oh my God, I'm really embarrassed about this. And then all of a sudden it goes off in my own head.
Because it's about you again, you
I
see.
know, it's about me. So my transformational business is called A Place of Space. And I have a Facebook page. I'm very new, so I don't have a website yet, but I have a Facebook page, A Place of Space. And I am on a place of space at icloud.com. That is my email address. Drop me an email. If you wanted to have a little poke around the Facebook page, I do probably weekly videos. I've also got a podcast called Thoughts versus Facts, which this conversation is hopefully going to go on to. I'm really excited to listen back to it. And that is, again, exploring the thoughts that we all have and the impact that it can have. And I also do short audio bursts about topics such as stress, anxiety, living in the now, the inner sense of knowing, and that goes as part of the Thoughts versus Facts podcast.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Have you enjoyed? I'm not even going to ask have you enjoyed that, because I think I get the sense that you probably have.
Have I enjoyed that? Steve and I have enjoyed it, and I enjoyed us connecting the first time, and it's been so great to talk to you, and I hope some of the stuff that we've talked about has resonated with those that are listening.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's the whole point. So thank you so much for joining me. And thank you, everyone, for listening in to Men-Able Matters, this episode. And Sarah and I will definitely be putting another one out there fairly soon, I suspect.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen. Take care.